questions or problems about anything that you need to ask me before we jump right into the rest of the review? We got
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
I was looking at the final exam schedule, and since we meet Monday through Thursday, do we look at the Monday, Wednesday time or the Tuesdays and Thursday time?
Okay, so technically, since we meet both days, like Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday, you have 2 time slots from which I could choose. And so if you go into your Blackboard, because everyone is in a different class, so not everyone's is going to be the same, but if you go into Blackboard and you click on the left-hand side where it says course schedule, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of course schedule, in green, it says final exam this day. And I can't remember, everyone's is either on Tuesday or Thursday, and I'd have to look to see whose is what, because again, I have 3 classes right now all together. So it's either going to be on Tuesday or Thursday, but it's already posted out in Blackboard for you. And once I get the final exam completed and uploaded into Hawks and whatnot, I'm going to put announcements in Blackboard so that they're just right there. So does that help at all? In fact, let's see, let me look. I put it in Remind the other day, but I can't remember, so I'll have to double check here. Any other things about anything before we dive into our the rest of our review? If you have submitted work to me and you stuck it in my email, I need you to go back and I need you to submit it in Blackboard under the correct Dropbox, because otherwise I can't grade it, all right, because it's not in the right spot. So let me
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do we get to the practice test questions on Hawks? You showed us the other day, but I can't remember.
Where you get to make up your own, like where you're making your own practice? Okay, so if you click on, are you in Hawks by any chance right now?
I get there.
Well, that's okay. If you click on, let me gotta think about it. If you click on the name of our class like normal, and then at the top you have like lessons, review, web test. Click on web test, and then right underneath the web test tab, there are 2 tabs. I think one says like other web tests. It's something like that. And that's where you're going to be able to go and create your own. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Let me know if that works for you. Okay. And if not, I can get on Hawks and look for sure. Anything else right now before we get started or finish, I suppose I should say. Okay. So then let's go ahead and do that. So yesterday we worked on the first 17 questions on the final exam review, and today we're going to finish that up. And then tomorrow is, let's see, Wednesday I'll still be online at 2 o'clock, and you guys can come in for help or whatever you might need. I'm not sure what you're going to want to see or do at that time, so it's going to be up to you guys. So let me go ahead and get my whiteboard up here, and then we'll get started. So give me just a sec, and I'll be right back. Okay, so yesterday we left off with number 17. So then today we're moving on to number 18. I think is what it was. Yeah. Okay, so number 18, this talks to us about circles, or it's a circle problem, I should say. And so what's going to happen is we are going to have to make sure that you have your formula sheet, which if you've looked in Blackboard, the final review formula sheet is in there. And you're going to want to remember that the standard form of a circle is x minus h whole thing squared plus y minus k whole thing squared equals r squared. So this is given to you, and it even says what this is, standard form of a circle. And so what we're going to have to do in number 18 is the instructions say write the standard equation of a circle given the following properties or whatever. And it gives us 2 points. And the points that they give us are -6, 5, and -2, -7. And it says in the instructions that these are just some random endpoints. So basically you have a circle somewhere and you have this point and this point essentially. And we know in order for us to write this equation, which is what we're aiming for, we need to know the h value and the k value, which is the center, which would be this point somehow. And we also need to know the r value, which is the radius, which is going to be this line. So we need to find 2 things. The first thing that we need to find is the midpoint, which happens to also be the center of the circle. Now, there's a midpoint formula, which is going to be on that formula sheet that you're going to use. So then that'll give us this point. And so now we'll have this point, and we already have this point, so now we need to find the radius. So step 2 is to find the radius. And the radius is going to be the distance from the center that we just found to one of the endpoints. And then step 3 is going to be take all of this information and write the equation. So that's what we have to go with. So the first thing that I am going to do is I'm going to label these points x1, y1, x2, y2. And then what I need to do is I need to think, okay, how do I find the midpoint, right? Because the first thing I want to do is I want to find the center of the circle, aka the midpoint. I want to find this point. Does anybody remember that formula? Or what we have to do?
You subtract you do like a fraction. You have like your 2 points subtracted and then 2 more points.
Okay,
To
so
find
Is
the
it
square,
X1
complete the
X1
square.
minus Y1 over Y1? I don't know.
now, okay, so here's what my advice is: if you can, and if not, I'm going to write it down. But if you can, look at the formula sheet right now and find the midpoint formula. So let me squeeze it over here. The midpoint formula is going to be x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2, and it's written as a point. So basically what we're doing is we're taking our x values, we're adding them up, we're dividing by 2. We're taking our y values, we're adding them up, we're dividing by 2. So we're going to say, all right, well, x1 is -6 plus x2 is -2. We're going to divide that by 2. We'll put a comma. y1 is 5, y2 is -7. Okay, we're writing this as a point, remember? And so we're going to have, okay, well, -6 plus -2 is -8, and that's still being divided by 2. And 5 plus a -7 is a -2, and that's still being divided by 2. And so finally, we're going to say, well, -8 divided by 2 is -4, comma, and -2 divided by 2 is -1. And so this is my center. So step 1, done, found the center. So what are your thoughts on that? -4, -1. Any issues with finding the center? And again, if you were given the formula sheet, which you're going to have for the test, okay, you're allowed to copy it or write it or print it or whatever. Would you be able to do that? Yes or no? That's what I need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's our midpoint. That's not too bad. So then the next thing on our little list over here is we have to find the distance between one of the points that we were already given and the midpoint that we just found. And that distance is going to be my radius. So let's do that in green maybe. So we're going to pick the first point that they've given me to be my x1, y1, and we're not using this guy anymore. So we're using this point, and now we want this point, which, hey, look, it's this guy. So over here, my center is x2, y2. And I need to find the distance. So I'm not finding the midpoint anymore, I'm finding the distance. And so I'm going to use the distance formula, which, let me squeeze it on here. Let's see, I can squeeze it here maybe. Distance formula is going to be the square root of, and then we're going to have x2 minus x1 whole thing squared plus y2 minus y1 whole thing squared. Okay, so again, if you were looking at the formula sheet, you would see it, and it even says distance formula. Okay, I'm not trying to trick you. And so we will take our x1 and y1 and our x2 and y2, and we'll run it through the distance formula. So here we go. So we'll have our square root symbol, and our x2 value is a -4, and we will minus our x1 value, which is a -6. And that whole thing is squared, plus sign. Our y2 value is a -1, and minus our y1 value of a 5. And that whole thing is squared. And so now we're inside, and what happens when we have minus a negative? It becomes plus a positive. So -4 plus 6 is a +2, which is still being squared, plus sign. -1 minus 5 is -6, which again is still being squared. Now here's where you guys grab your calculators, and this is where we mess up, all right? So we're going to continue. We're going to say, all right, well, 2 squared is 4, and -6 squared is +36. And that's still under the radical sign, so I'm going to get radical 40. Now here's the thing, okay? When we found the distance, in addition to finding the distance, up here in my formula, I need r squared. Well, if this is r, if the square root of 40 is r, I'm going to have to square it. And when I square it, the root and the square will cancel. So the radius, r squared, r squared is going to be the number just 40. So I've got the center, I've got r squared. What are your thoughts on finding r squared? Okay. So then the last thing that we need to do is take the information that we just found and put it into our standard form of the circle, and then we'll be done. So again, the standard form equation was the very first thing that I've written down. And so now we have our center, we have our h and our k value, we have our r squared, and so all that we need to do is put it together. So we're going to have parenthesis x minus, what's my h value?
4.
Well, it's a -4,
Okay.
okay? So we're going to square that, and then we're going to say, okay, plus sign, parenthesis, y minus, what's my k value? It's a -1. That whole thing is squared. We just got r squared to be the number 40. So the last thing we're going to do is say, hey, look, what happens when I have minus a negative? It just becomes plus a positive. And so really what I can have is I will just have x plus 4 quantity squared plus y plus 1 quantity squared equals 40. And this is my final answer. So here was the plan, midpoint, radius, equation. Take a sec, take that in, let me know what you think, okay? Because otherwise we're done. Okay, I'm not hearing any questions, so I'm assuming that we're good to go.
Is there only going to be one like that?
Yeah. Okay. All right, so then on to the next one then, number 19. Yeah, number 19. All right, so number 19, this one is talking to us about a piecewise function, okay? And the question is the three-parter where it's asking us to find the value of the piecewise function given x equals this number, this number, this number, whatever. So the first thing that we have to have is our function, of course. So we have f of x equals 2x minus 2 if x is less than -1, or -2/3 x plus 2. Is that a plus 2 or a plus 7? I can't remember. It is a plus
7.
7, thank you. Plus 7 if x is greater than or equal to -1. So here's the functions that we're given. And we have step 1, step 2, and step 3. And so each of these are asking me to evaluate. Step 1 says if x equals 1. Step 2 is if x equals 2. And step 3 is if x equals -3. And so what am I going to have to do?
-1.
It is. Thank you. Okay, so number 1, I'll do them in different colors so we can kind of keep them separated. If x equals -1, which one of these formulas, the first or the second, is it going into? The second one, right? Because this says if x is greater than or equal to -1, well, it is equal to -1. So that's going to give me -2/3 times -1 plus 7. And if you want your calculator for this, that's totally fine. And so what we'll do is we'll type it in, and however you go about figuring it out, whether you're typing in or doing it by hand, for the sake of time, we're just going to get 23/3. Any issues with having gotten that number by deciding to stick it into that second equation? Any issues with that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So then step 2, let's see, we'll go green. If x is equal to 2, so which one? Is x is 2 less than -1, or is 2 greater than or equal to -1? Am I putting it in?
Second one.
Second one. So 2. So again, I'm going to have -2/3 times 2 plus 7. And again, you're going to calculate this with your calculator. When you do, you'll get 17/3. Any issues, any problems with that? All right, so then last one, if x is equal to -3. So -3, is -3 less than -1?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to put it in the first one. So 2 times -3 minus 2. Well, 2 times -3 is -6, minus 2 is -8. All right, done. So when you see this piecewise function and you're plugging it in, you're just asking yourselves, based on these guys over here, you know, the x values, Which one am I picking? The first one or the second one? Show me something, write something down, plug it in, whatever, done. Any questions, any problems right now with number 19? Right now, on number 20, this is one that sometimes I have a hard time recreating these graphs. So let me see. So basically we have a parabola and it's going, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, okay. So it looks something like this, okay, I think, yeah. And I need to know where this thing is increasing, decreasing, or constant. So there's a point here, and that's pretty much it, I think is good enough. Okay, so what do you think? Remember, when we talk about increasing and decreasing and constant, we're only ever looking at the x-axis right here. And so here's your eyeballs. Remember me drawing these pictures? Here's your eyes, and they're just looking from left to right. And as your eyeballs travel from left to right, forget about these arrows for just a moment because they're misleading. As your eyeballs travel from left to right, what's this black line doing? Which way is it going?
Up.
Down, right? And then, hey, look, here's a point. What happens at this point? Well, it stops going down and it starts going
Up.
And so if I'm asking you, where is this thing increasing? Well, what's this x value right here? Because right here is where it stops decreasing and starts increasing. What's that x value? How far to the left am I?
3.
You know what? It is 3. But guess what? I accidentally can't draw a graph to save my life. So let me see if I can get rid of that. I can't. All right, it's really a 2 if you're looking at the actual picture. I'm sorry. So we know this is a -2. So where's this increasing? Well, it starts to increase right here, and it continues to increase forever. So from -2 to infinity, it's increasing. Well, then where is it decreasing? Well, somewhere over here is where it started, and it's decreasing, decreasing, decreasing. Oh, look, it stops. So it's decreasing from -infinity to -2. Is this thing ever constant? Is it ever a flat line that looks like this?
No.
So we can put none or NA or something like that. All right, so what are your thoughts? Increasing, decreasing, constant by looking at a picture.
How will we know when to use like a parenthesis or a bracket?
Okay, so when you're doing increasing, decreasing, and constant, you never use brackets. Okay?
Okay.
That's how we'll know. The only time that we're going to be using brackets is if we're talking about like the domain or the range or something like that, or interval notation. But if they're asking you for increasing, decreasing, constant, only parentheses. Okay? All right, so then are we ready to move on to 21?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's do it. So 21, we have, it says consider the following functions. F of x equals x squared plus 13 and g of x equals x plus 6. And there's several steps here. So step 1 asks me to find f plus g of -2. And step 2 asks me to find f minus g of -2. You can get where I'm going with this. Step 3 is f times g of -2. And step 4 is f divided by g of -2. And the last one, well, actually, that's a lie. There's 2 more, but we'll get to that in just a second. Let's do these first because these are just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. These are pretty straightforward. Think back to when we did this, and I think this was in Unit 4. It was basically what they're saying is, and I don't want to write this out every time because it's too much work, but on number 1, what this is asking me to do is find f of -2 and add it to g of -2. Well, in order for me to do that, I'm going to take -2 and pop it in an f, and I'm going to take -2 and pop it into g. So in f, it's going to go right here, and in g, it's only going to go right here. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead to the side, and I'm going to do that because it's going to save me a lot of time later. So if I find f of -2 first, I'm just going to do -2 squared plus 13. Well, what is -2 squared?
4.
4. And what's 4 plus 13?
17.
Okay, so f of -2 is 17. Now let's do g real fast. If I want g of -2, that's going to be -2 plus 6. Well, what is a -2 plus 6?
4.
4. And so when I get back down to my actual problem, it says, hey, take f and g and add them up. So I'm going to do 17 plus 4. 21. Done. In step 2, take f and minus g. Okay, 17 minus 4. 13. Done. In step 3, this is a multiplication dot, multiply them. So 17 times 4. Okay, we might need a calculator for this, but we type it in, we get 68. Done. And the last one is just division. So 17 over 4. We might type this in, we might try to calculate it, whatever. It doesn't. And so this is my final answer. So what are your thoughts? This is just our function arithmetic. It's where we add, subtract, multiply, divide values of functions. Any major issues with this 1 through 4? Because there's still 2 more, step 5 and step 6. But I need to make sure that this is okay first. Okay.
It's pretty simple.
It is pretty simple, right? It's pretty straightforward. So then if you take a look at step 5 and step 6, I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff so we can see a little bit easier. But step 5 and step 6, 2 things you notice. It's the FOG stuff. It's the composition. So let me just kind of get a little line here. So we're going over here. So here will be step 5. It wants me to find f of g of x. And remember, this is FOG, and I don't like FOG, right? Because I can't see anything in it. Get rid of this. So I rewrite it as f of g of x. And the reason I want to rewrite this is because I started in the middle with x. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm taking x and I'm putting it into g. Well, that's already happened. That's right here. And so really what I'm really doing, since I don't have any numbers like I did in the last 4, I'm going to take all of g of x and I'm going to put it into f. So I'm going to take all of this and I'm going to put it right here. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to come up with x plus 6 squared plus 13. So pretend, here's my green thumb again, right? Because I've been growing stuff a lot lately. Here's my big old green thumb. Okay, here it is. If I cover up this x value and I come over here and I bring this over and I put it right on top of my thumb, do you agree that my thumb is now down here and it has x plus 6 on top of it? It's still being squared. I'm still adding 13. This is still the same. Do we agree that it's the same?
Yep.
So now what I have to do in order to simplify this, generally speaking, how do I simplify something if it contains these parentheses? What is it that I have to do here?
Put them side by side in FOIL.
Okay, I have to put them side by side. That's the first thing I have to realize. And then FOIL. Is my 13 just hanging out? It is just hanging out is what I meant to say. My 13 is just hanging out. So here I go. So x squared plus 6x plus another 6x plus 36. And then my 13 is still there. Plus 13. And as always, my end goal is to simplify as much as possible. And so I look at this and I say, okay, well, there's only, let me do it in red so we can see it. There's only 1x squared. These two guys will combine to give me plus 12x. These are just whole numbers. And when I add them up, I'll get plus 49. And everything is as simplified as I can make it. And so now this is my final answer. Done. So take a sec, look over that. What are your thoughts?
Good.
All right, then if you look at the last one, which there should be a 6 there, but for whatever reason, you know, me and typos, there's not, but there should be. So the last one, I'll squeeze it on here. If you look at number 6, it's similar. However, instead of just using regular OX, now there's a number back in there again. Okay, so we'll squeeze it on here and then we'll be done with this problem. So we'll put it in this red box here. So number 6 tells me to find f of g of -2. And again, there's FOG. I don't like FOG. So I rewrite this as f of g of -2. And that looks really bad, so let me fix it, parenthesis. Okay, so this FOG business is gone. All right, so I always start on the inside. And when I look on the inside, the innermost piece I see is the number -2. And where is it going? It's going into g. And so what I'm finding is g of -2, which I did already. And I know that that's -2 plus 6, which is actually 4. So far, so good?
Mhm.
Okay, so now I'm going to come back up here. And I just literally calculated that g of -2 is 4. So this g of -2 business can be gone, and in its place can be a big old fat 4. And so what I'm trying to find now is f of 4. Well, in order for me to do that, I put the number 4 into the function f. So there's a big 4 right here now. So it's going to be 4 squared plus 13. Well, what is 4 squared?
16,
And what is 16 plus 13?
29.
And ta-da! As soon as I write it, done. So my advice for you on this type of a problem is, since there are several steps, don't just get tunnel vision, okay? Because in the past, I have seen people just fly through this because, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all the same, so to speak, using that -2, they don't realize that step number 5 doesn't contain the -2. And so, of course, they're going 90 miles an hour, and they just buzz right over it, and they get the problem wrong because they weren't paying close enough attention. So just be cautious. All right, any other issues, questions, problems, whatever with number 21? Okay, number 22 then. It says to solve, so we need x equals something, okay? Equals something. Solve this elementary exponential equation. So we have 3 to the 3x minus 8 equals 1/9. Now, since it's talking about expo, okay, and you don't see the word log, there's a good chance we don't need logs here, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, look, here's a base 3, darn, here's a fraction. Can I somehow take this fraction and turn it into a base 3? That's what I need to know.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so isn't this really 1 over 3 squared? Do we agree that these are the same? And anytime I have an exponent in the bottom, it had to have been a negative number to get there. So really, isn't it 3 to the -2?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this stays rather 3 to the 3x minus 8. This 1/9 turns into 3 to the -2. And so now that I have the same base, what do I get to do with my exponents? What do I do with those exponents since the bases are the same?
Cancel them out. You don't look at them.
Okay, the bases, but I take the exponents and I set them equal to each other.
Yeah.
So now, here's what I'm dealing with. All this other junk, don't care about it anymore. It's just this little guy right here. And so I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And I'm going to get 3x equals 6. And then I'm going to divide by 3. And I'm going to get x is 2. And done. All right. What are your thoughts?
Good.
Questions, problems? Okay. All right, so number 23. There was a question like this on the test that you guys just took. And some things that I noticed was not a lot of you, but some of you just literally clicked bank 1 or bank 2. And maybe you had a 50-50 shot. But if you got it right and there was no work, you didn't get credit. Okay, so we have to make sure that we can do this. So
on the test, when it had that, I had to do the second part before I could answer the first part.
Okay, so here's why, okay? On the test, and Ashley, you had this question too. In the problem, initially, it didn't give you a time, okay? And so generally speaking, if it doesn't give you a time, just pick one. Pick t is equal to 1 or pick t is equal to 2. I don't really care what you make t be, but the thing is you have to make t be the same for both. If you're like, nah, I'll see what it looks like in 5 years, just pick 5. It's fine. But just make sure you pick the same number, okay, Sarah?
Yeah,
I noticed that.
Yeah, because I was going to skip it and come back. Then I hit next and it was step 2 and it gave us a time. I was like, I'll just do this and then go back and answer it.
I could tell that you did it backward, honestly, because I was like, wait a second. But that's okay. Okay, so here we go for 23. So basically you have $2,400 that you want to invest. And it gives us some information and you have 2 options. Okay, so we'll do this. We'll say, here's bank 1 and here's bank 2. And so the first number is 2,400. Out of the variables, let me get the formula up here that we're going to use. A equals P1 plus R. Here's the formula that we have to use. It's compound interest formula. And so the 2,400 that you're going to invest, which letter is going to be represented by 2,400?
P.
Yeah, so P equals 2,400. Okay, we keep going. And right now we're doing bank 1. So it says the time is 1.6 years. So T is 1.6. And it goes on to say that the local bank, the interest rate is 2.98%. So R equals 0.0298. And it's compounded annually. If something is compounded annually, how many times a year? Just 1. And so we're going to make sure that we do our NT real fast, just because it helps us later on. So it's just to the 1.6. Okay. And so that's everything I need as far as typing in this, typing it into the formula. And so for bank 1, I will have 2,400 times 1 plus the rate 0.0298 over 1 raised to the 1.6. Now, some of you, okay, and I'm using the word crazy very loosely, but some of you kind of went crazy on the exam and you left this number whole and you did some stuff. No, dude, just type this in exactly as it is. And so now, if you have your calculator, I recommend doing that because here's what you should get. 2515.45. That's the answer you should get. So take a second and see if you can. Because a lot of us on the exam, and some people ask me, you had stuff written on your paper correctly, which thank you, so I can give you full credit. But when you went to type it into your calculator, something happened. So take a second, make sure you can get this number. If you can, hang tight. If you can't, tell me. So this was bank one. Any questions, any problems with bank one? Okay, so then what are we gonna do for bank two?
The same thing, but your N will change.
And also our rate. But yeah, you're right. So here we go. P is still 2,400. T is still 1.6 years. According to this, our rate in bank two is 2.45%. So 0.0245. The N value, how many times is something happening if it happens semi-annually? Twice. And then our NT, we'll just multiply these two little guys together, and that'll give me 3.2. And so again, okay, so here's my divider. I'm going to take all this information that I have right here. I'm going to pop it into this formula. So I will have 2,400, 1 plus 0.0245 over 2 to the 3.2. And again, I'm typing this into my calculator. So make sure you get 2495.35. So see if you do. Okay, I'll take a sec. You take a sec. Make sure. Any questions?
I have a question,
Okay.
but it was about the test. So how it didn't give the time on the first part, I think I just did it without it. So would that be the same difference of if I would have pretended I used one?
Yes, it sure would have been. Mhm.
Okay, because I got answers. I just didn't understand how.
Yep, it would have been as just like if you would have done a 1. That's all.
Okay.
All right, so now the question actually is, the question that we're trying to answer, which bank should she choose? And so we have answers. We know if she chooses bank 1, she's going to get a return of this much. She chooses bank 2, she's going to get a return of this much. Well, how much do you want? You want more money or less money? Obviously, you want more money. So you would choose, in this case, bank 1. And now we're done. That's it. Now on the test, it asks you to plug some stuff in. Okay, fine. But what are your thoughts on 1 and 2 right now? Or, excuse me, finding bank 1 and bank 2. Any questions, any problems with number 23 as a whole?
No.
Okay. Now 24, there was one like this on the exam, and overall I thought it went really well. I thought you guys did really good with this one. So the problem is the ln of 2x plus 4 equals 3. And it says to solve the log equation. Okay, well, again, if we're solving, we need x equals something. And typically when we're solving log equations, we want to go from log to expo. And in order for me to draw my arrows, I have to have a base, which I do not have right now. And so we know that the ln is actually log base what?
E.
Mm-hmm. So this turns into log base e of 2x plus 4. That still equals 3. And so now I have the ability to draw my arrows. And so that will give me e to the third equals 2x plus 4. Now you're going to notice, excuse me, on the test that it asks you for an exact question or an exact answer and a decimal approximation. So we're not going to touch the calculator till the very end. So right here's the x I'm trying to get by itself. What do I need to do first in order for that to happen?
-4.
Okay, so we'll -4. And since e is just we'll call it a variable kind of, I can't actually do this math yet, so to speak. So I have e to the third -4. That equals 2x. All right, well, here's the x. Now what do I need to do?
Divide by 2.
Okay, and so my exact answer is x equals e to the third -4 all over 2. That's my exact answer. Now, if you're going to type this into the calculator, which you have to, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing the top first. So here's what you should get. Okay, so take a second. 8.04. See if you do get it. Because again, on this question, a lot of people had the exact answer right, but this was wrong on Hawks.
Got it.
Okay.
I did it, but I just did each piece separately. Like I did E3, then -4, then divide by 2.
Yep,
That's what I did
totally
too.
fine. Yep. However, once you guys find your rhythm and you're getting the answers I'm getting, I don't care. Okay. I just need to make sure that you are getting this number. All right. Any questions, any problems with number 24 as a whole? All right, 25 and 26. These two questions are, you're going to write the problem down essentially, and then you're going to type it right in. And so you're going to be using the formula sheet in order to do that. So 25 is asking me about the pH. And the formula for the pH, which will be on the formula sheet, pH equals negative log of that H3O whatever, okay? And so when you're reading through this particular problem, it straight up tells you in the problem that the H3O plus is 5.35 times 10 to the negative 1. It tells us that. And so all you have to do is take this and pop it in right there. So you're going to write on your paper, pH equals negative log 5.35 times 10 to the negative 1. And then you're going to get your calculator and you're going to type this in. Now, some of us, and I don't know who, I mean, I don't remember who, but some of us, I even hate saying this word, but some of us cheated a little bit on the test, okay? Because you might have written this out, which was perfect, but then you went absolutely nuts and you had a ton of work, like 7 or 8 lines. And that's how I knew you were cheated, because all you have to do is type this into your calculator. Okay, so make sure that when you type this in and you round it to 1 decimal point, that you get 0.3. Do it right now. Okay, if you haven't. And prove to yourself and prove to me that you don't have to cheat, that you can get this number by just typing this in. Any issues, any problems? Okay. Then we'll move forward.
I did not get 3. Negative 3.
Well, this is this is a decimal point.
0.3.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I got that.
Okay, as you say, yeah, it's a 0.3. I'm sorry. All right, so we're good to move on to the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So 26, this is talking to us about the decibel level of whatever. And on your formula sheet, you're going to be given the decibel equals 10 log. And then you're going to have I over I sub 0. That's the formula. Now, in this exact problem, it literally says that I sub 0 equals 10 to the negative 12. And it says that the sound intensity is 30 watts per meter. So I, which is just your intensity, is just the number 30. So you're going to take these two pieces of information and you're going to pop them in here. So you're going to have D equals 10 log 30 divided by 10 to the negative 12. Now, again, this is how I can tell some of us were not being completely honest, because this was good. This looked great. This looked great. But then there was a bunch of nonsense down here and then the right answer. And so all you have to do, okay, is get out your calculator and type this in. So you're going to hit 10 log. A parenthesis will come up. You're going to type 30, division sign, 10 to the negative 12, close parenthesis, enter. And when you do that, it says round off to the nearest whole number. You should get 134 point something, but we're going to round it to 135. So take a sec, prove to me and to yourself that you can do it. Tell me if you get it. If good, if you do, great. We'll pause for a moment. If not, we'll see what's wrong.
I did not get it.
Okay, so let's see, 10 log.
Let me see. Let me try it again.
Yeah, try it one more time. And then what you really, guys, what you're getting when you type this in is 134.7712125. But we're rounding it up to this.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Okay. All right, so for 26, that's it. Any questions, any problems? Okay. All right, so 27, it's another compound interest problem. And it says that he's saving up money. He currently has 3710, but he can get a better loan if he had more, which was 4248. His interest rate is 3.5%. It's compounded monthly. How long will it take him to get that money? So let's go through and let's write everything we know. So the first number they give us is what he has, 3710. The formula that I'm going to use is this guy. And so from this formula, which letter represents my current value, how much I have?
P.
Okay. And then it says, if I did have more money, which was 4248, if I had that, which letter is going to represent the future value?
A.
Okay. Then it goes on to say that the interest rate, oh, I already told you. The interest rate is 3.5%, so I put it into the calculator as 0.035. It's compounded monthly. So if it's compounded monthly, how many times a year is that happening?
12 times.
Okay. And then the question is how long? So t is what I don't know. Okay, so far so good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, when you need to find the time, what do you have to do?
Divide
Divide, Ellen, divide.
Perfect. Okay, let's do it. So we're going to take all the information that we've been given over here on the left, pop it into this formula. We're going to divide, Ellen, divide. So here we go. So we will have 4248 equals 3710, parenthesis, 1 plus 0.035 over 12 to the 12t. Okay. So we wrote the formula down, or we wrote the problem down. And step 1 is to divide. So we'll divide both sides by 3710. Everyone agree to that?
Yep.
So now the 3710s are gone. So I'm just going to, because I'm lazy and because I don't have that much space, I'm going to just erase it like this. Okay, everyone agrees? We divided? Check. Now we're going to take the ln of both sides. So we'll take the ln of this. So we'll stick ln in front and we'll stick ln in front. So we took the ln. Now, the whole reason that we take the ln is so that the exponent that's up here on the top can come out in front. Do we agree?
Mm-hmm.
So then what this turns into is the 12t that is an exponent no longer is, and it's just out front like a normal number. So I have the ln of 4248 divided by 3710 equals 12t ln of all this stuff. So I took the ln, check. The last step is to divide. Well, right here is the t that I need. What is all the stuff that is being multiplied? What am I going to do?
Divide by 12 ln parenthesis 1 plus.
Yeah, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And what I do to one side, I'm doing to both. Okay? And actually, you know what? I don't want to write it like that because you're not going to be able to see it. Actually, yes, I do. Sorry. So let me just put my little marks here. So then basically what's going to happen is, here's my exact answer. T equals the ln of 4248 over 3710 divided by 12 ln of 1 plus 0.035, like that. Okay, now get your calculators out, okay? Because again, this was a problem where you had this written out beautifully, but then when we typed it in, we got crazy answers. What we should get is 3.87. Try it. The one thing I want to kind of warn you about, when you type your division button, there needs to be a parenthesis in front of this 12. So try that. Take a minute. Prove to me that you can get it.
I got it.
Okay, so just sit tight for a second, okay? Let other people let other folks have a try too, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, cool. Oh, good. Okay, so it looks like a lot of folks are getting it. So overall, though, from start to finish on number 27, with defining the time, any questions, any problems, any issues at all right now? All right. Then let's take a look at the next one, 28. All right, so number 28 is a log problem, and it says solve the following. If there's no solution, make sure to state that. So here's the problem. What is this, 28? We have log base 5 of x minus 3 plus log base 5 of x plus 5 equals log base 5 of 5x minus 5. Okay, lots of 5s in this problem. Okay, so since the word is solve, I need x equals something, okay? And I can't solve a log problem if there are two logs on the same side, which in this case there are. And so generally speaking, if I have many logs and I just want one log, what has to happen?
You got to cancel them.
Okay, I have to cancel them by condensing them together, so to speak.
Right.
And so since, oops, sorry, that was loud, my keyboard. Since this is a plus sign and I go to condense them, what am I going to turn these into?
You're going to put them side by side.
So this is going to turn into log base 5 of x minus 3 times x plus 5 equals log base 5 of 5x minus 5. Okay, now, One log over here, one log over here. Great. Once I get one log on each side, I no longer care about the logs. I just care about the stuff. And so I have this stuff equals this. And remember, we can't take the log of a negative number. So this is where we're going to have to do a little extra work. On the left-hand side, in order for me to get rid of these parentheses, I'm going to have to FOIL. So I'm going to get x squared plus 5x minus 3x minus 15 equals 5x minus 5. And then I'm going to get these two guys over on the left-hand side so I can set the whole thing equal to 0. So I'm going to minus 5x here, and I'm going to add 5 here. So minus 5x here and add 5 here. So these are gone. So when I combine my like terms, I'll have x squared. These are all of my x values. It's going to leave me with a minus 3x. These are just my whole numbers. It's going to leave me with a negative 10 equal to big fat 0. Since I see this x squared, it tells me a few things. How many answers am I going to expect to have here?
2.
2. And how am I going to find them? What's the process?
Factor.
Okay, so here we go. So we need two numbers that are going to multiply together to give me this negative 10 while adding up to give me a negative 3.
Negative 5, positive 2.
Okay. And so now I'm going to be super lazy but super quick and solve this. From this piece, I know that x is going to be a positive 5. From this piece, I know that x is going to be a negative 2. And so technically speaking, I solved it. But I need to remember, hey, guess what? This actually was a log problem from the get-go. So 5 is my final answer. Now, what do you think? Thoughts, questions, problems?
Good.
Hopefully that's still fresh in your brain since we just did that, right?
Yeah.
All right. Ready for the next one? We're almost done, really. All right, so here we go. 29. And this is one where basically what's happening is you have some angles. Maybe they look like this. I don't know. And their sum is 180 degrees. And you are trying to find how big they are separately. That's what we're trying to do, okay? So it says two angles are supplementary if their sum is 180 degrees. Find two supplementary angles such that the larger one is 30 degrees more than 4 times of the smaller one. Okay, so the reason that we hate this question so much is because it's a word problem. And so we have to read the problem and we have to turn it into equations. So it basically says the first sentence says two angles are supplementary if their sum is 180. That's one sentence. How can I turn that into a mathematical equation? What are
I
those?
remember this at all.
Y equals 180.
Okay, x plus y equals 180. And since I drew this little picture because I knew it was coming, can't you see that in that little picture? X and y. Okay, fine. So then we keep reading, and it says something about the bigger one and the smaller one. Well, do you know which one the big one and which one the small one is? No. So why don't we just make one bigger and make one smaller? Because we can do that. Okay, so there. I made one big, one small. Fine. So here's what I'm going to use to continue. So the sentence says, the larger angle, which in this case we decided to call y. So let's replace the word the larger with y. Sorry, the dog's going crazy over something. I lost my train of thought. The larger angle is 30 degrees more than 4 times the smaller. Well, how am I going to represent that's just an equal sign. How am I going to represent 4 times the smaller angle?
4x.
Yeah. And how am I going to represent 30 degrees more than that?
Plus 30.
Okie dokie. So here are my two equations that I have to use. And what am I going to do, do you think? If I know that y equals all of this, where can I put that?
Put it in for y in the first problem.
Yes, I'm going to substitute it. So I'm going to put x plus. Now, instead of me writing y, I'm going to write this stuff because that's what y is. So 4x plus 30. And then I have to remember that equals 180. And so now it's just me solving this. So I'm going to get 5x plus 30 equals 180. I'm going to minus 30 from both sides. And I'll get 5x equals, 150. And then when I divide both sides by 5, I'm going to get x is 30. Okay, fine. So then I found that the small angle is 30 degrees. Well, how am I going to figure out the big angle? Because that's my goal. I'm trying to find the big angle and the small angle.
Plug it into your y equation.
Say it again.
Plug it into your y equation.
You can. Or if we know the sum is 180, what can I do with the number 30?
Just put it in for y in the first one and then just subtract.
Exactly. So I could do 180 minus 30, which is going to give me 150. And so in Hawks, you're going to have to set this up, and they're going to ask you, there's going to be a blank, and it's going to say like small angle, and there's going to be another blank, and it's going to say big angle. And so the small angle, we calculated it to be 30 degrees. And the big angle, we calculated to be 150. Done. Okay, so what do you think? Not bad, not bad. Okay. Let me get myself ready for the next one here. Okay, so any questions, any problems on this one before we continue? Okay, so number 30 then. They give us two equations, negative 5x minus 8y equals 53, and x plus 7y equals negative 43. And it says to use the method of elimination to solve the following system of equations. Okay, and so when we talked about substitution and elimination a long time ago, elimination is where we get rid of our x's or our y's. Okay, now I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Okay, when there's a single variable, it's a lot easier to get rid of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if I try to get rid of these x's, or excuse me, of these y values, I'm talking about big numbers. But if I want to get rid of the x's, look, this is just a 1. And so I need to turn this 1 into a 5. And so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take this whole entire second equation and multiply it by the number 5. So that's going to give me 5x plus 35y, and 5 times negative 43, negative 215. Okay, so far so good?
Mhm.
All right, so now this middle one, we don't need anymore, okay, because we rearranged it a little bit. So now I look at my x values. Hey, guess what? They cancel, which is what I wanted. And so now I'm going to take my y values and I'm going to add them up. So negative 8 plus 35 is going to give me 20. So this is a big plus sign out here. 27y. And I'm going to take these two whole numbers and I'm going to add them up. So 53 plus negative 215 is going to give me negative 162. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 27. And I'm going to get that y equals negative 6. Okay, so far so good?
Yep.
Now, once I have y, what do I need to do in order to find x? I take this
Plug
y.
it back in.
Yeah, so pick one. You have 3 to choose from. I don't care. Just pick one. Which one you want to pop it
The
into?
bottom one, it looks a little better.
Sure, the bottom one.
Less
Okay, so
grabbing.
we'll have 5x plus 35 times negative 6 equals negative 215. Okay, and so we'll have 5x, and then we'll do 35 times negative 6. So minus 210 equals negative 215. And next I'll have to add 210 to both sides. 210. That'll leave me with 5x equals negative 5. I divide both sides, and that gives me x is negative 1. Now, technically we're done. However, you got to think way, way back. When we talked about graphing and solving systems of equations, what this means is somewhere out there you have a line, and somewhere out there you have another line. And these two lines are crossing at this point. And so then, technically speaking, this is a point x comma y. So we have an x, we have a y. We have to write it as a point. Otherwise, our answer is not complete. So my final answer is going to be, as a point, negative 1 comma negative 6. And this is it. Done. Okay, what do you think? Questions, problems? Not too bad, right? Just have to think about it. It takes a little while to remember. All right.
How long are we going to have to take the final?
You have 2 hours.
Okay.
Okay, and that's not a me thing. That is standard procedure for the university. You get 2 hours to take your final exam in.
Okay.
All right, so number 31. This is one of those questions where it asks, it's a max or min question. And when we talked about max or min, does anybody remember, before we even read it, what thing we used to solve the max and min? There was a special little guy we used. What was it called? Anybody remember? How about vertex formula? Where we have the x and the y, And the x told us how many, and the y told us how much. Remember that?
Yeah.
How much? Okay. All right, so here's the problem, okay? Keep that in mind. We have C of x equals 25,000, and I'm gonna have to get rid of some of this. 25,000, one more zero, minus 30x plus 0.05x squared. And the question is, how many tractors do I need? And quite frankly, I don't really care about the rest of the problem. Here's what I care about, how many? And so according to the vertex formula, in order for me to find how many, I only need the x value. And the x value is the opposite of b over 2a. Remember that? So I want to rewrite my problem so that my thing is in order. So 0.5x squared minus 30x plus 25,000. And so what that means is this is a, this is b, and this is c, which c I don't even need. And so in order for me to find the x value, I'm going to use this. So my b is a negative 30, but the opposite of that is a positive 30. And I'm going to divide it by the 2. My a is 0.05. Now here's where it gets a little tricky, because I swear you guys don't listen to me sometimes when I tell you about calculators. How am I going to type this in? What am I going to do to the top first? Leave it alone. I'm going to come down here in the bottom and type this in. 2 times 0.05. That's going to give me 0.1. Now I'm going to divide. Okay, because if you type this in as is, you're doing this to your calculator. 30 divided by 2 times 0.05. And what the calculator is going to do is this first. And that is not what you're trying to make it do. And so when you type 30 divided by 0.1, you get 300. Now stop. How many tractors? 300 tractors. Done.
What would you do if you were trying to find the min? Like, what would that?
As far as like the actual cost, like how much money?
Mhm.
Okay, so the x value tells me how many, the y value tells me how much. And so if this question went on to say, well, how much money would that be? You would take this x value and you would put it right here, and you would put it right here. And you would type the whole entire thing into your calculator. Okay.
Oh.
Right, because it's a point. It's x comma y. If we found x, everywhere we see an x in the formula, we put the x, we type it in, it pops out the y. Okay. All right, what do you think? What are our thoughts about 31? Questions, problems, anything at all? All righty. Let's see. Ooh, just a few more to go. Okay, great. Okay, so 32. And then we can always go back and look at specifics or whatever you want. Here's the problem. G of x equals x squared plus 8x plus 12. And what I'm trying to do here is step 1, I need the vertex. Step 2, I need the x-intercepts if there are any. And step 3, 2 other points. And then step 4 is to graph this thing. So who can remember how I find the vertex if it's not in what we called vertex form? Anybody?
Completing the square.
Yeah. So if you happen to be looking at your, hold on, let me see here. What do I want? Yeah. Okay. So we have to complete the square. Okay. And so here we go. We'll come over here, and it's important that we try to remember to do it the way that I showed you, as far as drawing all these little weird things, because it helps us. So we're going to take our b value, which in this case is 8, divide it by 2. We're going to get 4. We're going to put it in parentheses, and we're going to square it, which is going to give me 16. Okay, so far so good?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now, we're going to say that x squared plus 8x, we're going to insert the 16. My 12 is just hanging out. If I put a 16 into my problem, what do I have to put back here to negate that 16?
Minus 16?
Mm-hmm. And so now these 3 terms are what we called our perfect square trinomial, and we were able to factor it very quickly by looking over here. And so we're going to make a set of parentheses, and what's over here? It's a plus 4, and it's in parentheses, and it's squared. So here's my x that they give me. Here's my plus 4. Here's my parentheses. Here's my square. And then, hey, look, these are just numbers. What is 12 minus 16?
Negative 4.
Negative 4. Okay. So this is vertex form. Vertex form. And from vertex form, typically it looks like this, x minus h squared plus k. And just like when we had a circle, h and k is our vertex. And so if I pull just h out and I pull just this k out, that's going to be my vertex. So when I look inside of this, remember, we pick the opposite of what this is. It looks like a positive 4. So when I bring it out, it's actually a negative 4. And then this guy over here, we take it for face value. So it's also a negative 4. So step 1 is done. I found my vertex. What are your thoughts on finding the vertex? Questions? All right, well, step 2 then says to find the x-intercepts. How am I going to do that?
Take your original problem and set it equal to 0.
Exactly. So x squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0. Okay, and since I have this x squared business, that tells me I'm looking for 2 answers. And how do I find those 2 answers?
Factor.
And so I stick the x's in and I say, okay, well, I need 2 numbers that are going to multiply to give me 12 and add up to give me 8. So what times what is 12?
6 times 2.
6 and 2.
Okay, and so then I have to solve. And so I'm going to get that x equals a negative 6, x equals a negative 2. Now, since these are x-intercepts, it even says on the instructions, express the intercepts as ordered pairs. You cannot just leave it like this and call it done, right? Well, that's terrible. X-intercepts are points. And so you're going to have to say that the x-intercepts are negative 6, comma 0 and negative 2, comma 0. So my x-intercepts, done. So what do you think about that? Okay. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to find 2 other points. And so remember, we had said we wanted to pick numbers that were really close to my vertex. My vertex value is a negative 4. Let's choose some. Go ahead.
Maybe like a negative 3 and a negative 5.
That is perfect. Okay.
Because
So
they're kind of going between your x-intercepts too.
exactly, yeah. And so we're going to pick 2 numbers that are really close to my x value, but we have to make sure it's not the x-intercept. So that's true. And so in this case, we're going to pick x to be, so let me get my pen out here. We're going to pick x to be negative, you said 3 and negative 5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we're going to take these values and we're going to pop them in here. Okay, so we're going to have negative 3 squared plus 8 times negative 3 plus 12. Now, this is a thing that you could type directly into your calculator. And in fact, I would encourage you to do so. And so when you do that, the number that you're going to get popped out is a negative 3. And so one of the other points, I guess I should have done this in a different color, is going to be negative 3, negative 3. Well, what if x is negative 5? Same darn thing. You pop negative 5 in there, and then again, you can type this whole entire thing into your calculator. And again, I encourage you to do so. Saves time, saves room for mistakes. But then you're going to get negative 5, negative 3. Okay, and so we found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different points that we can plot. So before we actually do the plotting, okay, what are your thoughts on finding these points? Completing the square, and then we found the x-intercept by setting it equal to 0, and we factored. And we said, okay, well, I want 2 numbers that are pretty darn close to my vertex, but not the x-intercepts themselves. I pop them in, I get some values. Any questions, any issues with that? Because graphing is going to be easy, right? That's the easy part. Finding all the numbers to graph is the hard part. Okay, and so we have to graph it. And now, of course, when you're in Hawks, what's going to be pre-populated is your graph, and they're going to pre-populate for you a parabola of some sort. You're going to click this little point right here and grab it with your mouse and move it down to your vertex, which is negative 4, negative 2. So about right here, I guess. And so when you do that, what's going to happen is the parabola is still going to be down here, and it's still going to look something like this probably. And then you're going to have to grab over here with your mouse and pull it up to the point negative 2, 0. So probably right here. So as you do that, it's going to expand in both directions. So you just have to be careful, okay? I mean, you guys have graphed in Hawks before. You know what to expect. So it's going to look something like this, okay? And on the way to you putting these points where they need to be, the points that we got down here will also pre-populate. Okay, so this is the hard part. Graphing, it's going to be a piece of cake. So what are your thoughts?
It's nice how it just
It is
gives you a
nice because
graph.
that's exactly right, because you just have to point and drag, so to speak. So what was this, 32? Any issues, any problems with number 32 whatsoever? Okay. All right, then 33. So we have 33. P of x equals 1 plus absolute value of x minus 4. And you're going to graph this thing. And it's asking you up, down, left, right, x-axis, vertical axis, whatever, a bunch of stuff. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is, I don't like the way this looks. So I'm going to rewrite it, all right, because I don't like it to look like this, because this confuses me. I think this is my first thing. It's not. So I'm just going to quickly rewrite this problem. The absolute value of x minus 4 and then a plus 1. All right, so over here on our little scratch work, we need to know some things. What's my parent function?
It's the V.
Okay, it's the absolute value of x. And in my mind, I know that it looks like this. Great. What's its vertex before I do anything to it? Just 0,
Positive
0.
4, positive 1.
No, hold on. Over here on just my parent function.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're like 5 steps ahead of me. Okay, so this is the stuff that I already know. Now, the first question, because again, in Hawks, it's going to look just like the review where you have to click. Okay, you have to click in the holes. So the first question is there a horizontal shift? Is this thing going left or right? So we look inside, and this tells me that it's doing what?
Right 4.
Right 4.
Okay, so it's going right 4. Great. The next question is there a stretch or compress? Is there anything out here, any numbers?
Neither.
No, so you're just going to click neither. The next question is x-axis reflection. Is there a negative out here?
Nope.
No. The next question is y-axis reflection. Is this x negative itself?
Nope.
No. The next question is vertical shift, up or down?
Up 1.
Okay, so up 1. So if my vertex started out as 0, 0, and I went right 4 and up 1, where am I going to be now, Sarah?
Positive 4, negative.
There you
Positive 4,
go.
1.
So then what's going to happen is that's going to be my new vertex. So on the graph, so what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, bam. Now, since you're in Hawks, once you do this, I'm pretty sure, yeah, that it pre-populates for you. This is the most important thing you have to be able to do. So what are your thoughts? Because really, I don't care if you have this a little fatter or a little thinner. I don't really care. What I care about is, do you understand these pieces over here, and can you come up with this point? So what are your thoughts? Anything, questions, problems, anything at all?
Well, before where I like jumped to the gun, couldn't you just look at it and know your new vertex?
Yes, Sarah. But the thing is, okay, is that when you're doing Hawks, you have to make sure that you can click through the answers.
Right.
Because they don't just say, give me the new vertex. They say, hey, is it horizontal shift, left, right, or no? And you have to be able to click through. So that's why I did this first. But yeah, you're right. You could just look at that and say, oh, this is my new vertex. And I'm fine with that.
So that could kind of be like a little check.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
All right, now step 2 for the same problem, okay, looking at the graph that we just drew, it wants us to find the domain and the range. Okay, so domain, range, looking at this graph. And so when we talk about domain is the x value and range is the y value. And so as my eyeballs scooch from left to right, here's my eyes, I'm looking. How far left and right is this picture going?
All reals.
All reals. I don't want to do that. All reals. Okay, now the range. If my eyeballs are looking at the x, if my eyeballs are looking at the y-axis, how far up and down is this thing going? Well, this is the lowest point. What is the y value right here?
1.
And how far up does this thing go forever?
Infinity.
Oh, I just said it. Oh my gosh. There you go. There's your domain and your range. All right, so start to finish, number 33. Left, right, up, down, all that business. What are your thoughts? Any questions? Any problems? Okay. All right, 2 more to go and then we'll be done. Maybe if I can get my computer to work. Okay, so yeah. All right, so the next one, 34, gives us y minus x equals 1/2. And it says, find the x and y intercepts and then graph. Okay, and here's my graph. All right, so in order for me to find the x-intercept, remember the x-intercept is a point on this line. What do I do with my mathematical problem? I let
Y
equals 0.
There you go. So we're going to have 0 minus x equals 1/2. Well, 0, of course, we know doesn't mean anything. We'll divide both sides by -1, and we'll get x is -1/2. Now, here's the problem that I see. Some of you will come over here, -1/2 is about right here, I guess. And you're going to just leave it like that for just a minute. And then we'll find your y-intercept. You'll get some other, I don't know, let's just say you do this. Some of you like to go boop, boop, and you have 2 lines, and it's a mess, okay? Here's why it's a mess. We cannot just leave our x-intercept as an x equals something. we have to turn it into a point, -1/2, 0, which is this point right here, -1/2, 0. Now we're going to do the same thing for the y-intercept, okay? But of course, when I'm looking at the y-intercept, I'm looking at the, whoops, oh my gosh, I'm looking at the y-axis. And so I let x equal 0 this time. And so I would have y minus 0 essentially is equal to 1/2. Well, of course, that doesn't matter. So y is just 1/2. But again, I can't leave it like that. So it's 0, 1/2. So I come to the origin, I go up just a teensy tiny bit. There's my 2 points. We can't overthink this. There are my 2 points. That means to me my line looks like this, and now I'm done. Now, generally speaking, the problems that you've used this for, these have typically been a whole number, maybe 4 or 5 something. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it's a fraction or a whole number. And again, when you're graphing in Hawks, your graph obviously will be pre-populated. You're just going to point and click or drag your little dot around. So this is going to be the part where you have to actually work. So what are your thoughts? Any questions, any problems on 34? Okay, fine. Last
I'm
one.
moving. I'm still writing it down.
Sure, go ahead.
Is the final going to kind of be like this, where we have like maybe like 1 or 2 questions from each section,
Yep.
sort of?
Mhm. Yeah, because there's no possible way that I could ask you like 4 or 5 questions from each section. We'd be here for like 6 months,
Forever.
right? Yeah.
I got it. You're good.
All right, so here we go. Last one. Oops, number 35. All right, so 35. It says find the equation of the line in slope-intercept form that passes through the following points, and of course simplify. So they give us this: 0, -11, and 5, 6. Now my answer has to be in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Okay. Now here's where I'm headed. Okay, but here's where I am. Just these 2 points. When all you have are 2 points, what's the only thing you can find between them as far as a line goes?
You can
A
use
midpoint.
point slope.
Okay, hold on. You guys are, you're right, but you're just 1 step ahead of me. The only thing I can find first, if I have 2 points, is just the slope, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's a formula for that. M equals blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Let's pretend we found the slope. So we'll just say for now that M equals something, because we'll find it eventually. Now, let's pretend we have the slope. Well, if we have a point and a slope, what do you think step 2 is going to be?
Point slope.
Exactly. Okay, so fine. Here's point slope. Well, how do I take point slope and turn it into slope-intercept form? Solve for, yeah, solve for y. Okay, so there's my plan. You guys know me. You know I love a plan. Let's get to getting, all right? And then we'll be done. So here we go. The first thing I need to do is I'm probably going to have to look at my formula sheet and remember, because, you know, I probably don't remember, what the slope formula actually is. And the slope formula, which is going to be on here for you, or on there for you, is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so the first thing I do is say, okay, here's x1, here's y1, here's x2, here's y2. And so then I put them in their rightful spots. So I will have, excuse me, m equals 6 minus -11 over 5 minus 0. And on the top, 6 minus negative becomes plus a positive. And so I will get 17. On the bottom, I have 5, 17/5. Now, that does not simplify at all, which is fine. So the slope is 17/5. Check. All right, so far so good?
Yep.
Okay, so step 2 is point slope. Well, you guys know me enough to know that my personal self always picks the first point. All right, so I'm going to use this first point and this slope. And if we have to remember, the point slope formula looks like this. So point slope is y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus, come on, x sub 1, like that. And so I would take my x and y value and I'll pop them in, including my slope. So this will give me, let's get a different color going here, y minus my y1 value is -11 equals sign. My slope is 17/5, parenthesis x, my x1 is 0. So here it is in point slope. Well, that's messy. I have to, simplify that. When I have minus a negative, it becomes plus a positive. What happens if I have minus 0? Big fat nothing. So this is going to turn into y plus 11 equals 17/5 x. So point slope, done. And then the last thing I have to do here is solve for y. And in order for me to get this little y all by itself, what am I going to do?
Minus 11.
And so I will have y equals 17/5 x minus 11. And now I'm done. All right, what are your thoughts?
Good.
So now we have completed we have completed the entire study guide, okay? Every single question. And so is there any question or any issue or topic or whatever that anybody wants to go back and kind of take a look at? Because what's going to happen is I'm going to say I'm done unless you need me, and I'm going to go in Hawks and I'm going to make some review stuff and put it in there, and then I'm just going to kind of turn you loose because I don't have any new stuff for you. That's it, and we're just going to use tomorrow to ask your questions. Maybe I'll come up with some more questions, we'll work them together, whatever. Thursday's the replacement exam day. We don't have to meet that day. I mean, if you want, you just got to let me know. And then next week is final. And then that's it. So you guys have got to tell me what you need, what you want. Okay. So anybody have anything right now they want to go back and look at?
So we don't meet at all next week.
That is correct. We do not meet at all next week. You only take your final on the day, whether it's Tuesday or Thursday. You'll have to double check. I'll double check as well. But you'll have from, midnight, so to speak, to midnight. You'll have a 24 full hours to complete that final.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions while I'm just right here talking to you guys? I guess I could see you. Okay. All right. Well, then if no one else needs me, I'm good. I'm done. So before anybody goes, I just want to say, please make sure that if you have any outstanding work that you turn it in because I'm grading and I really do need it. And I'm going to be messaging you guys regarding replacement exams. And if you haven't heard from me by yesterday or yesterday, you will hear from me today, and I'll give you my advice, and then we'll go from there. So unless you need me, unless you have any specific questions that you want to ask me right now, we're good to go. So let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys. I plan on meeting tomorrow at 2, Ashley, for anybody that wants to. If you have specific questions, if we do want to meet, I can bring questions. Like, it's whatever you guys think. If you think you're prepared for the final, you don't have to come see me again. If you think you need extra help or extra questions, come back tomorrow at 2. Okay? All right, guys. Have a good rest of your day. I'm going to be doing some stuff in Blackboard and whatnot. Reach out to me, okay?